the opening opposition, you are 5. The closing opposition, you are 1. And in closing opposition, you are 4. Those of the audience members, please turn off your cell phones. Please do not make any noise. Please be respectful to the speakers. So you want to clap and cheer them, you can do that, but don't interrupt them when they are speaking. Congratulations to the teams. Good luck to all of you. And it gives me now, on behalf of this adjudication panel, great pleasure to invite the first speaker, the Prime Minister, to open this debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the status quo, most liberal democracies take a range of affirmative actions in order to make sure that there are open opportunities for any minority who is denied opportunities, which are valid career choices to the future. Ladies and gentlemen, this is because it is unfair to suggest that the biological traits or like sexual preferences, which are something you are born into, affects the future of yourself, ladies and gentlemen. For that reason, I think it should be extended to religious organizations as well. Just because it is religious and it is something that is holy and therefore the government shouldn't touch is not a reason to say that they can deny people's opportunity when they wish to actually move out to the social ladder in that society. And therefore, we are happy to propose that all equal opportunity legislations should be extended to religious institutions. So what do we mean by this? If we say that in all liberal democracies, programs and legislations that allow certain minorities, whether we are happy to for it to be gender or sexuality or all these kind of things which is something that is determined from birth. We think there should be a range of programs to allow these people to actually access career choices within religious institutions, ladies and gentlemen. So we think that legislations which now are open to companies and educational institutions such as subsidizing the equal education in universities or creating quotas for people on executive boards of that company should also be extended for things like priests and high religious figures within each religious institution. We say that the amount of subsidies or quota should be up to individual companies, but that's not the debate. But we think they should be fairly. I think the subsidies and quotas should be fairly large, minimum of 30%, something like that. And we think with this we can actually change the status quo. We have 3 points to make in order to report this case. Firstly, I'm going to tell you why we think that it is unjust to say that to deny people of career choices, even when it is on religious grounds. Secondly, I'm going to tell you all the practical short-term benefits that is going to be created for those who really want to become priests in religious institutions. Koki, my partner, is going to tell you later on of how we think that society is going to be more willing and able to accept these high figures from minority backgrounds in the future, like any other affirmative action has done. Now, first point was about why we think it is unjust. Like I told you in my introduction, we take affirmative action all the time when we think that discrimination exists on a factor that is unchangeable, like race or gender or sexuality. We think it is unchangeable, and we think it is unfair to say that you are denied opportunity for it because it is something you didn't choose to be born with, ladies and gentlemen. And that is why we take affirmative action in other socially important institutions like corporations and so on, because we think it is just unjust. Now, notice that in the status quo, in religious institutions, just because the holy text or some people in the past has said that people like women shouldn't become an important figure. These people are denied the opportunity. And we think that is also analogous to the harms of the past when it came to corporations and so on, ladies and gentlemen. Now, opposition may say that, well, then these women should choose not to belong to that religious institution. It is their free choice. We think, therefore, and therefore there's no problem. Well, we think this just can't stand, because religion, we think, is a valid choice for everyone to claim, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we can say the same thing actually to companies, or if you don't like that company, go to another company. We think that is unjust because we think that this is determined on an unchangeable characteristic and it is unfair to suggest so. Sit down. So, and also, we think, ladies and gentlemen, we can always intervene on religions all the time. Sit down. Because firstly, we think that backlash is not the reason. They may suggest that there's going to be great backlash because they really believe in female and gays being married. That's really harmful. Sit down. But the thing is, we would say, first of all, that religion can change because it is elastic, like any other culture in society, ladies and gentlemen. We will give you examples how, like, the practice of suki, which is a very violent act in India, got banned, ladies and gentlemen, because we were so brutal and actually went even so far as burning wives when a husband died and so on. And we think we didn't really destroy the core parts of its religion. And also, like interpretation of text can also be changed. Like you can see how the meaning of neighbor in the Holy Bible of Christianity has changed. It didn't include people living in Latin America in the past, and therefore the Christians came along and massacred them. Nowadays they have extended its meaning to include those people and became more inclusive. So we can clearly say that these things can change. Note it down. And also, ladies and gentlemen, backlash is just not a reason, because companies can also take on backlash, and also a necessary cost. Companies can threaten the government to move out of that country and to cause unemployment and all these kind of things. But we think that is a necessary cost in making sure that people have a fundamental right to realize their happiness locally.
In your very example of companies, do you not recognize that companies also have the right to cut those applicants who do not go along with their values and their areas?
No, they don't. When it comes to things like gender, because that's why we make sure that they have a certain quota of employing it, ladies and gentlemen. It's done in America, it's done in the United Kingdom, it's done in Japan, and pretty much everywhere around liberal democracies. Now, what are the practical benefits of realizing their happiness? Well, firstly, it's quite clear. We can say that people who really want to become priests in that certain religion can do that, ladies and gentlemen. And it's a process of self-actualization. Someone who's being oppressed is going to be liberalized. They can pursue the happiness that doesn't harm others, ladies and gentlemen. It's a valid choice which we think the state has to recognize. And we think, ladies and gentlemen, because happiness, the definition of happiness differs from person to person, we have to make sure that choices is always open to every individual. But secondly, we say that the ones who are, for example, are gay right now and have become priests, they have this tied their claim about the sexuality, and we think that is tremendously harmful because they can't. Well, what's happening in the status quo is that, for example, a gay priest hide the fact that he's gay, and he can't say that because that's not allowed in his institution. But what happens is that he's being constantly denied by everybody else, and he can't open up a fundamental part of his life, which is being gay, ladies and gentlemen. And we think that is really harmful because we think that that's going to cause a tremendous amount of oppression, depression, and stress on that individual. And we think that is a harm which we can do without having at all times. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, we have told you that religions can change. It is the role of the government to make sure that we open up career choices for every individual. Because things like gender, things like sexuality, things like your race is not something you have a choice over. We think it is unjust, and that's why we have to propose a change. Thank you.
Right, I thank the speaker for the speech for opening this debate. Now I invite the first speaker of opposition, the leader of opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, in this debate, opposition legislates very simple in the stance that we believe that religious institutions do have a sovereign right to decide upon their policy-making process, especially when it comes to quotas of making applicants. And we by the speaker. I mean, suggested this problem to us about how certain individuals are actually not able to go into these institutions because of such policies that come from these fundamental religious beliefs. Well, first of all, we think that these fundamental beliefs are are made based on the principles and based on the beliefs that are made of these religions. So we believe that the government cannot make a judgment to say that that is wrong and you are morally wrong, so that you have to change your policy. We think that is a very great intervention that a government in a liberal democratic society cannot maintain. Well, but on also second point, Mrs. Speaker, we heard our Prime Minister actually talk about the kind of changes that institutions are going through. Exactly, Mrs. Speaker, we believe that according to these institutions' characteristics, according to the leaders of the institutions, according to the people who belong to that institution, we believe that they change according to their will. It's not we believe that without government actually having to be a third party to give them directions, we believe that if you leave them, they will change according to that. We're going to prove this to you more on our argument. No, thank you. However, even if they don't change, even if some institutions don't change, we believe that the problems they suggested will not be solved. They gave us this example of gay priests, right? He gave us, even if they become gay, even if they become priests, because they're, despite the fact that they're gay, they will not be able to adjust fairly to these institutions because of the perceptions. Mr. Speaker, we believe that that perception is basically based from the fundamental beliefs and fundamental principles written in the Bible, Quran, whatever. And we believe that regardless of that policy, whether that policy is actually changed because of government intervention, we believe that will not make any difference to the perception that people actually have. That is why we believe that the policy suggested by the Prime Minister today is very ineffective. No, thank you. So, without further ado, we'd like to move on to the opposition case. First, we want to talk about the very sovereign right, the very principle of how these institutions have that right, and also how government carries more risk if it intervenes in the matters of these religions. Also, we want to talk about how different bodies can actually clash when the government intervenes in the matters of those religions. Second off, we want to talk more deeply into the institutions themselves, the kind of changes in the flows of the institution, how how diversity is taking place, and how we can actually achieve better care equality in any state. Yes.
You say the dogma said that women cannot enter the religious institution, but on the other hand, you say the religious institution is changing now, which is a lie.
Mr. Speaker, you can't really judge like the whole case of how legislation is changing institutions. I have told you there are like thousands and thousands of different institutions according to different religions. Like even in one Catholic Christian institution, there are like diverse characteristics from different branches. And we believe that some branches are heading towards change. Maybe some branches are more conservative than others. But the important thing is, those changes are made very fundamentally according to the very principles of these religious texts. But not only that, they also reflect certain needs of the people and certain needs of leaders involved in these institutions. So that is why we're giving you those different cases, and we hope you don't get confused. So first of all, we want to talk about sovereign rights of these issues. Well, very principally, Mr. Speaker, we believe that religious institutions do have a sovereign right on the way that they are operated, right? We believe that as the opening government suggests, the kind of freedom of religion, the kind of choices these individuals have, we believe should be maintained when it comes to religious institutions. Because when you actually think about it, the very basics that these religions were operated is the thousands of years of traditions, the thousands of years of text. And when you actually talk about those people involved in their religion, they are the people who have that strong faith in those religions. Yes.
Alright. Okay. Culture for all companies is that they want to make profit, and that's their doctrine. Why will the government intervene to make sure that they have quotas on all these companies? When having quotas may harm their profit-making ability.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, we believe that the kind of example they gave us is different when you talk about religion, because religion has been accepted as a separate factor that is different from politics. That is different from the society. The way that society is ran has been separate from religion. Like, for instance, even many liberal democratic countries, like the United States, although they grant like equality and general equal freedom, there are some states that like still hang on to abortion policies, right? That is simply saying that when there are more religious believers, according to that legislation, the government simply leave them as a separate factor, and that is a very separate thing that we're talking about. So moving on to our arguments, right? First of all, we told you about that actually interfere in those institutions' decision-making processes. Like for instance, Mr. Speaker, when they're when a government is pursuing against like gay marriage, for instance, the government is going to have a bias that certain gay priests may not be becoming a priest. We think that you cannot actually judge a government as entirely unbiased and on a neutral party. They can make right decisions for quotas, especially when we talk about those religious institutions. Second, we want to talk about these institutions, right? We believe that some of the institutions are actually changing according to the flow. Like for instance, there was recently this elected lesbian priest in the United States, and we believe that that clearly shows that some of the two churches in the United States are actually moving towards change. We cannot actually say that all of them are conservative. So we sit in the status quo. You don't see the dire need of government actually risking its own reaction. You see the resentment that can possibly come out from these believers and these leaders when there are the changes that can be made by these institutions. More than that, even if that religion is not taking place, we believe that, as we've already told you, because they're run on the very uncertain basis of the kind of principles that they believe in, we believe that change is necessary. For these reasons, we're very confident.
Right, next speaker for the speech, and invite second speaker for opening governments now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The opposition sides totally ignore our program. We propose in certain religious institutions, of course it's maybe it's a conservative institution, that women or other sexuality people is oppressed by the religious institution. So therefore we are very proud to propose this motion. Anyway, I want to talk about this one, and I have the two issue about the firstly about the religious rights. They want to try. I want to try a very big issue. And secondly, I want to further extend why in long term we can change the religious institution, Mr. Speaker. Anyway, firstly, they somehow try to say that religious sovereignty is an absolute. It is a very sacred and holy thing, so we cannot intervene such kind of things. However, Mr. Speaker, it is not true. Firstly, fundamentally, we intervene to the religious. If the religious people keep in the Christian church, killing their people, actually we intervene them and arrest them. And we say, under the status quo, a same as very bad thing is happening because the women deprive their opportunity because of they are the women. We say it is a discrimination and they never engage this point. And secondly, we say, in such kinds of discrimination situation, the government has a legitimacy to do such kinds of very, controversial issue. Simply because, for example, my partner already told you the company, even if this affirmative action is harming the company's profit, actually we can do, we forced to do such kind of thing. Simply because it is against the people's right, it is against the human right, Mr. Speaker. So therefore we do. And moreover we say about the politics, actually this harm is tremendous because the politics affect every person. However, we intervene to the political party or so, and we make the female quota on the Congress or so. And we say it is just simply because fundamentally the man and woman or other sexuality people is not so different. And as Project Opposition side says in the point of information, the company has the right to cut the Africa. However, Mr. Speaker, if this cut action is based on some discriminative reason, we can intervene such kind of things. And what's another thing happening is such kind of religious institution people deny women. The only reason is because they are the women, and we say it is wrong. Yes, Rosie.
How do we exactly deny women in that religious country? How do we exactly deny women in that religious country?
So simply because the Catholic Church didn't gender or sexuality discrimination or so forth. The fundamental thing is different, Mr. Speaker. Maybe that can be the agape or sometimes the other things, the belief, the God, or so forth. And why such kind of discrimination is happening under the status quo? That's simply because it is a social custom or social norm is creating in the very 200 years ago or 300 years ago, such kind of norm is created. And such kind of things is happening, Mr. Speaker. And moreover, we say, if you read Bible, there is no exact statement that women cannot be a priest or so forth. So such kind of Bible is changed by the leader, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, there is a education, or the academic institution about the religious exists, and they making the battle or discussion about such kind of things. And so therefore we say such kind of things can be changed. And actually such kind of religious rule is changing, Mr. Speaker. That's simply because the Christian people didn't kill the Muslim people automatically or randomly. However, Mr. Speaker, in the past we are killing. The Christian people is killing the Muslim or some kind of the other people. But such kind of things is changing. Such kind of things is changing. So therefore we say, but the Christian people is still believe that Christ also. So therefore we say it is okay situation. No, thank you. And I want to explain why in long term we can change such kind of religious rule or religious discrimination or so forth. So firstly we say we can destroy the stereotype of the man has. So simply because if we take this proposal, the woman can also be a very good priest or so, and maybe they can do the misa or some kinds of things, Mr. Speaker. And the people can see such kinds of situation, Mr. Speaker. So therefore we say they can accept the fact of the even women can do such kinds of things. And such kinds of things is happening in the gay priest case or sometimes the other case, Mr. Speaker. So therefore we say it is a good for the changing the perception of the other people. It can be a destroy the stereotype of the other person has. And secondly, we say it can be a role model for other women people, Mr. Speaker. So simply because the religious people is oppressing by using their dogma or so forth, and structurally such kind of woman is oppressed. So therefore we say such kind of woman who want to be a priest is a minority. So simply because that they deprived by the religious institution the opportunity or education or so forth, Mr. Speaker. However, after taking this proposal, such kind of religious women or gay people can see the reality. Even the gay or even the woman, they can be a highest priest. So therefore we say people want to be such kind of things. People can be seen as a role model, Mr. Speaker. So therefore we say such kind of even for the woman, it is a better. The woman's perception will change and change and change. So therefore we say in long term, this proposal breaks the achieving the equality in the religious institution, Mr. Speaker. Anyway, what I want to try to say is very, 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 very simple. Even the woman and even the man or other sexual people, there is not different people. We should assess such kind of person based on the ability based such kind of things. We should not discriminate such kind of person. So therefore we say we are very proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
Right, so thank the speaker for his speech, and now we invite the second speaker of opening opposition.
Mr. Speaker. This was the problem that
somehow limiting the rights of women in some sort of policies, in some sort of institutions. But did they really prove to you what kind of real problem existed in the status quo? We think the problem depiction, problem suggestion from the very beginning wasn't clear enough for us to actually engage more deeply in. But since we're in a very good looking opposition, let me just still engage to that point, Mr. Speaker. First thing, Mr. Speaker, before I move on to any of my rebuttals, we think this is the very context of this debate, being religious institution itself is very important, right? Because when we look at the characteristics of religious institutions, people gather in this institution based on the common fundamental belief, right, Mr. Speaker? The very reason why they're belonging into one institution is because they share one fundamental belief, so-called this religion. For example, Bible, the Quran, Mr. Speaker. So we think when it comes to people's beliefs, and when that factor is the core factor that gathered people around, we think the institution, especially its religious institution, firstly, it's very hard to change their fundamental value just because of one government's policy. But secondly, we think they also should be guaranteed the sovereignty to maintain their own status, right? Because firstly, the government already has granted freedom of religion to every individual, Mr. Speaker. So we think this itself shows and sends a message that government is going to respect whatever it comes to religion values and religious fundamental problems, Mr. Speaker. So we think the very context of today's debate was very different, and it has to be differentiated from any kind of discrimination. The very reason that why these institutions are taking such policies is because of their own belief, which is a very important factor towards these people, Mr. Speaker. So with these having said, let me just rebut to some of the very few of the points that the opening government has brought to you, right? Firstly, my previous speaker has brought to you this example of Bible, how Bible can be interpreted in various ways. Mr. Speaker, yes, we agree to the fact that Bible can be interpreted to various ways, Mr. Speaker, but we think the opening government has to prove to you why that interpretation has to be made by the government, right? The Bible itself is the very fundamental text that defines Christianity, Mr. Speaker. We think if the government were in the first place allow the religious freedom and judgment calls upon those religious sectors, we think the interpretation of these changing norms and changing policies within the Bible itself should not be intervened by the government, Mr. Speaker. We think the very party who should interpret this text should be the very own religious themselves to change whatever the norms they are, because they are the ones who will be affected by this at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker. And my last rebuttal, he has also told you, this the very biggest clash between these two sides was can these changes actually take place in the status quo? We think the policy suggested by the opening government itself was not feasible, right? We think these religious fundamental problems, theories itself is something that is very strong-minded within people's mind, Mr. Speaker. So we think just because you are trying to have this one policy forced upon people, it's not going to suddenly change people's perception, which will at the end of the day lead to further harm. And I'm going to explain to you my yes, sir.
Okay. If my religion, for example, tells me to kill all Christians because they are fundamentally wrong, are you okay with